Hello and welcome guys, my name is Steve Hook, I'm from the Republic of Moldova and I'm super excited about teaching you Golang. So today we're going to talk about why picking up Golang as the language of choice. So there are many things we're going to talk in this lecture, but primarily we're going to talk about Go's philosophy, Go's offers, and a couple of other things. So I promise you this is going to be super interesting, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the lecture. Alright guys, so speaking of our presentation, we're going to talk about introduction to Golang, so it's not going to be something too fancy. We're going to talk about Golang's philosophy and why you should learn Golang, which is the question we primarily want to answer. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll first start with things we should talk about in this class. We'll start talking about why Golang and we'll try to answer that question so you guys stick with it and you guys get a clear, understandable answer about it. And we're also going to talk about Go creators and its philosophy. And that's super important for you to understand, because without understanding the philosophy, the meaning of the language, you can't understand why did such a language even appear, because it pretty much solves the same problem as any language does. Another topic we'll talk about is our first Go program. So we'll get our hands dirty with a Hello World app. We also want to talk about Golang's philosophy. Also, we want to talk a little bit about Golang biases and whether or not they're true. And we want to clarify that. And I prepared a surprise for you with a guy which I invited. So it's going to be some sort of an interview and you guys are going to like it, I promise. The format of this class is going to be organized as such. So you guys should ask questions and I promise I'll answer those questions. So that's a requirement from you guys, because you have to learn, you have to know, and you have to understand. That's why you should and you must ask questions. You tell me where I screwed up and how should I improve, because that's how I grow and that's how I make better content for you to consume. So if you guys will say everything is cool, everything is going to be the same as it was. So you have to tell me what I screwed, where should I make it better, and how should I make it better. So that's totally up to you. You're the community and you're the one who are making the content I produce better. So it's all up to you guys. So here's the thing. When you get into the community, you have to be nice with the people around you, because you don't have to be a smartass. That doesn't help anybody and just ruins the community, just annoys people around you. That's why be nice with the community, because you're part of the community and you make it grow, you make it be the community. So be nice with people around you, and that should also help you as well. Every bit of code we're gonna write in this lecture and in next lectures, I will provide them in the comments below via sharing links. And also the slides which I'm using, they're totally free to use. They don't require any license, asking me any crap or stuff like that. You can use them for free and I pretty much do them for you so you guys understand the content better. Another one I have for you guys is once a month I'll try to gather a big list of questions you might have or you may have asked me, and I'll try to answer them all in one lecture. Next thing we want to talk about is Golang history. So let's go a little bit back in the past. So if we take a look at Golang.org, how the language itself originated, it says something like this. So Go was born out of frustration with existing languages and environments for the work we were doing at Google. And programming had become too difficult and the choice of languages was partly to blame. One had to choose either efficient compilation, efficient execution, or ease of programming. All three were not available in the same mainstream language. So that's the problem. What is the Golang main focus? So Golang's main focus is to be simple, to be fast, and to be statically typed. So that's what they wanted to make, and that's what they did actually. So another one I want to talk about is Go signature. That's super important because you can recognize a language and its design, its way of being novel by its creators as well, which I'm going to show you, because they are really the ones who put on the basis and the foundations of computer science. I mean, they're really the ones who created Unix, B, UTF-8, Golang, and many things like this. So that's why I think you should consider learning this language because of this reason, because this language was created by geniuses like Ken Thompson, Rob Pike, Robert Grishamers. I mean, they are geniuses and they created a super amazing language, which we're going to delve into. Another one I want to talk about is our first Hello World program. Yeah, baby, first Hello World program. So it's not going to be too much code. I'm going to share this code in the playground or something like that, but I just wanted you to know that we are getting our hands dirty from the first class. But this one is just a hello world. So we have a package main, and that's super important because every code has to live in a package. And there's also the import statement if you need any, and there's the func main. So we need a func main in order for a certain code to run, because that's the function which runs primarily. And we have the func package, which we call the print line function, and it just prints hello gophers. So just so you know, guys, we are gophers. So the ones who write Golang code, we are called gophers. and that's why this channel is called Gopher 2. It's basically tutorials for gophers. Another thing I want to talk about, and that's the most important thing of this lecture, is Go's philosophy, and we're going to deep dive into each step of this philosophy. So we'll start with the first one. So Go is simple to read and write, and then Go it compiles and runs fast, and then Go is easy for prototyping, and it's also statically typed, and it's also concurrency built in, which is super amazing, and you'll see that in the next lectures. And it's almost cross-platform, and you'll see why almost. And Go is garbage collected, dude, that's super amazing. And it has good documentation, and it has compatibility and stability, which a lot of people love. And if you're coming from JavaScript, you must love that, because I am coming from JavaScript, and I know what stability and what compatibility means. So let's start talking about each one individually. So we'll start with the first one, simple to read and simple to write. So Robert C. Martin says, indeed, the ratio of time spent reading versus writing is well over 10:1. We are constantly reading old code as part of the effort to write new code. So therefore, making it easy to read makes it easier to write. So indeed, a lot of the time I spent a lot of hours doing or implementing a certain functionality. It was due to the fact that the code was quite crappy, and I had to spend a lot of time reading the code in order to understand what should I write. So we're not writing too much code, we're reading a lot of code. So reading your code easily and fast means you're more productive. So let's go ahead and delve into what exactly that means. So it means it has fewer lines of code, and that's important for reading. I mean, if you have a lot of lines of code, you can't really read fast and understand and reason about that code. Also, code lives inside packages, files, functions, which is tightly scoped. And that really means that code is separated into small chunks, and every chunk has its own functionality, its own responsibility, and you can reason about that code. You can read that code easily because it's living only inside a small package, a small file, a small function, and that makes it readable. Also, it has a limited feature set, and that really means it has very few keywords, and it doesn't even need a table for keywords when compiling your code. And that's super amazing. And you don't have to remember a lot of keywords because the language itself is simple, and the way it reads, the way it writes, it's simple. So that's why it even reads and writes faster. So it also discourages frameworks and encourages standard library. And what that means is you don't need frameworks or third-party libraries in order to do complex stuff, because Golang was meant to be used for the modern web. And if in other languages such as Java or JavaScript, you have to pull in third-party libraries in order to solve a complex problem, in Go, you don't have to do that. You can do that, but you don't have to, because it comes in with built-in features which are meant to be solving complex problems, and that's super amazing about the language. It's also making it more readable, and that's the point actually. Also, Go has built-in formatting tool, and that's what I like about it. I mean, a lot of people hate this because, you know, they want to format the code the way they want, but in fact this only introduces complexity. So my point is, a lot of us may not care how our code is formatted. We only care we have a standard way of formatting it, and many people don't like it. Maybe I like it personally, and this is what Golang has taken under its wings, and that's what we're given as a built-in feature. So that's super amazing, and that's also very important for reading code and for increasing our productivity. So brevity in naming as opposed to cluttering of repository. Also, when you're writing Go code, you're not encouraged to write super descriptive variable names, because that's cluttering your code and it's making it super hard to read. And Go opts for giving short names and keeping brevity across your code, because it makes it more readable. And if your code is tightly scoped, I mean, it's in a specific small function, it has its own meaning when you have short variable names, and you don't have to be super descriptive about it. Alright, so another point I want to talk about is Go compiles and runs fast. And what exactly that means? That means your code runs directly on a bare metal, and it's not interpreted as a dynamic language. So the code you compile gets generated into a binary file which runs directly on machine, and it's basically understood by machine directly. It doesn't need interpretation or stuff like that, and therefore it makes it super fast. Also, it errors on unused imports and variable, less code to compile therefore. So when you don't import a certain stuff, or you import it and you don't use it, Go is gonna error on that. And if you don't import that stuff, you basically compile less code and you basically run faster. So another thing I want to talk about it, Go has its own assembler with almost cross-platform capabilities. So the idea is they have their own compiler, their own assembler. So basically they assemble their code, and given two environment variables, Go OS and Go Arch, you can provide binaries for every platform without needing to compile them on each platform. Go also has rich runtime info in the binary. 2 megabytes for a Hello World program. Really? What is going on? 2 megabytes? I mean, it takes a couple of kilobytes for a Hello World in C, and you might be surprised about this, but the idea is Go has a lot of runtime info, and that's richer info for running your program, and that's why it has 2 megabytes for the simplest program. Also, Go has built-in concurrency model. Also, another point I want to talk about is easy prototyping, and that's super important about Go. That's one of those 3 main points. It's being simple and being able to prototype very easy. If you're coming from JavaScript, Ruby, or Python, Go is going to be very similar to that. So you get all of the goodies in one bundle. So what exactly this means? It embraces people who come from dynamic languages, and that's what I mean, like Python, JavaScript, anything like that. Also, it requires less code to be written for a certain functionality to be working. And another point I want to talk about is the fact that it provides everything in standard lib, so no need for frameworks at all. And that's super amazing, especially if you're coming from JavaScript. It has a good language design, so it has ease of solving complex problems. And let's move on to the next one. So Go is statically typed, and then we talked about that in those 3 main points, the main Go focus. So what exactly that means, statically typed? You probably heard this term a lot in the community. So it means in Go, there are no objects, there are only types and variables of a certain type. Also, what that means is code is checked against the compiler. So another thing about this is that it prevents scrappy errors at compile time. So you don't have things like undefined of something, or trying to get undefined, trying to call undefined of something. I mean, those are really stupid errors we hate when running dynamic code in production. Also, Go defines a fixed set of operation and a value range for all the types. So if you have types, you can do any kind of operations you may want. And that's super important because types are limited to the range they have and to the set of operations they have. And that's what it's amazing about statically typed languages. Also, good to mention is that Go allows definition of custom types. So another thing I want to talk about is Go has concurrency built in. And you may have heard of this term concurrency and parallelism. For now, I just want to tell you what concurrency is at the high level. What that means is Go defines an elegant model for concurrency called CSP. We're going to talk about this in the next lectures, where we talk about Go routines and concurrency and all that kind of stuff. Go uses all computer resources efficiently. Back then, the language is used to only use one core, which means not all of your resources are used in your computer, and Go makes use of that by default. Also, Golang allows a program written synchronously to be concurred and execute in parallel. So if you've written JavaScript, for example, asynchronous code differs a little bit from synchronous code, and you have callbacks, you have promises, and all that kind of stuff. Here, Go allows you to write synchronous code. I mean, it really looks synchronous, but it executes asynchronously. It executes concurrently and in parallel, which we're going to talk about in the next lectures. The mechanism Go uses to accomplish this are called Go routines. They're not OS threads, as a lot of people may associate them with. And also, Go uses a routine scheduler to do efficient management of resources, to schedule those Go routines, how they run, and how they handle their work. So another one I want to talk about is almost cross-platform. And why did I say almost cross-platform? So basically, this is the idea. You have Go OS and you have Go Arch, and you provide the operating system you want to compile your application for, and you also provide the architecture you want to compile your application for. And basically, you simulate this cross-platform capability. So this is the idea. You just provide some environment variables, and everything is just done for you. So you don't have to compile every single binary on every single machine. And that's super boring. It's super annoying, and we don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and see what exactly that means. The first point I want to talk about is there's no need for a compiler program on every physical machine. So as I said before, there's no need for compiling every single program on every single physical machine in order to obtain that binary. So we have this cross-platform capability. So another point I want to talk about is that CGO thing. You don't have to use it, or if you use it, you have to use build flags. So you have to be careful about it. That's why it's cross-platform almost. And also, it has insignificant to zero dependencies, meaning it's all in one binary, and that's super awesome about it. You can just place it somewhere. All right, so another topic I want to talk about is the fact that Golang is garbage collected. And what exactly garbage collected means? So garbage collected means it has no memory allocation or memory freeing control. So you have no control over that, and that's super amazing. Go does it all for you, and you really have saved yourself a lot of headaches and a lot of wasted time, because I've done that when I was a student, and when I had to do memory allocation and stuff like that in C, it was just really a pain in the back. Another cool, interesting point is you don't have pointer operations. So if you've written C and you're very used to C, in C there are pointer operations. So you could do increment, decrement, stuff like that with pointers. There's no such thing in Golang, so you can't do do that here. Another point I want to talk about is there's no constructors or destructors. If you're used to languages like Java, PHP, where there's classical OOP, there's constructors, destructors, that's even in C++, then you don't have this capability available. I mean, there's no constructors, there's no destructors, there's just types and variables of a certain type. Also, another thing I want to talk about, which is really important, super important in Go, is the fact that it has good documentation. And I really love this thing about Go. Now, documentation is really a thing which a lot of programmers love. Now, when there's no documentation, it really sucks. And we all know that. So there's a classical saying, and I really love this one. I mean, it sounds like this: documentation is like sex. When it's good, it's very good. And when it's bad, it's better than nothing. And we've all been through those cases. We've all been through the same pain. When you use a library or a third-party package and it just doesn't have good documentation, or it doesn't have documentation at all, and you have to dig in through the code to figure out it yourself. So what exactly means that Go has good documentation? So let's go ahead and check it out. So that means docs and standard lib can be accessed from within IDE, text editor, Golang.org, GoDoc.org, and anything like that. So basically, if you have your editor and you're super lazy person just like me, you would probably want to open it in your IDE, which a lot of people do. And you could also open it in your text editor. And that's the amazing thing about Go. You could just do that yourself and you have no worries, and you have the docs inside of your local machine, man. That's super amazing. So another point I want to talk about is Go docs are clear with good use cases written by geniuses. As I said, Golang is created by geniuses, so their docs are super awesome. So another point I want to talk about docs is the fact they also have good examples and explanation. For example, Effective Go. So if you don't want to read the docs, like the official docs, there's such a page called Effective Go. So they provide topics and examples, and that's super awesome about it. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who learn by example, and I myself am one of them. So when you're given an example on a certain topic, it's just very easy to learn. So Effective Go just does that. And there are multiple other websites and platforms where you can learn Go by example. So another point I want to talk about is compatibility and stability. Now that's a problem in many languages, and we all know that. So if you come from dynamic languages, you probably have this experience where something is broken suddenly. Some feature is not available in some version of the language. So let's take a look how Golang handles compatibility and stability. So here's the thing: not too many or no more features are awaited in the language. And in fact, the Go creators said that, and they are not bringing in too many features. So it's not like in other languages. Here's one feature, here's another feature, here's feature X, here's feature Y. Next year is coming these feature and stuff like that. So it's not like this. You have a limited set of features and you only use those features. And only when it's necessary, they bring in a new feature, but that should be necessary. So another thing I want to talk about is the creators of the language promised no breaking changes into the future, and that's super amazing. Also, another thing I want to talk about are biases. And remember what I promised you at the beginning. I promised you that I will invite a man who knows Golang, and he's going to tell us about whether or not those biases are true, and we're going to shake them a little bit to check out. So primarily, we're going to talk about these biases. Go is another version of C. All right, another one. So Go is only used by DevOps and for infrastructure tools. Another one: Go has nothing to do with OOP and just looks like C. Another one: Go is only used at Google. And another one: Go is not mature enough for production. That sucks. And another one: only good for Hello World apps because it's easy to read and it's easy to write, basically. And I don't really agree with a lot of these, but let's invite our guest to tell us a little bit more about biases. Alright guys, so in the studio I invited John, who's an experienced Go developer, so he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself, after which we will interrogate him with a list of biases which are going on about Golang. So people are talking about Golang, different kinds of statements, so we want to make sure whether or not those are true. So he's going to help us figure that out. So without further ado, let's invite John into the studio. So John, welcome in. Hey guys, hey Steve, it's really a pleasure to be here in the studio to smash these biases, because I hate when people talk a lot of crap about a certain technology. So I'm really ready to answer all of those questions. So it's really a pleasure for me to be here. Alright man, so we'll start with the first question. Go is another version of C. So what's your take on this one? Speaking of Go versus C or something like that, so Go is really not another version of C. I mean, it's both an yes and a no. Like, pretty much every language out there is C-like, meaning we do not reinvent the wheel and we do not reinvent the syntax and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty much a lot of the things are the same in many languages, including Go. But what Go differs from C is really about being simple, having less boilerplate in the syntax, being very lightweight, and also Go is meant to be used for modern web programming, meaning you don't have to write a lot of boilerplate yourself, or you don't have to use third parties. the standard library comes built in with a lot of good things which you can use in production. So that's something which C lacks, and that's something which, in order to use in C for more advanced stuff, you have to pull in different third-party stuff, and that's one of the differences. Also, in C, you get a better performance, of course, and you get to write more low-level stuff. So that's, I guess, where C wins. But Go is really not another version of C. It's just another way of solving problems. It's a more intelligent, a more simpler, and in my opinion, it's the language which does the best in this case. So that's my take on Go versus C. All right, John. So here's another one. Go has nothing to do with OOP, and it just looks like C. So what's your take on this one? So Steve, speaking of Go being OOP or not, that really makes me laugh whenever I hear it or read it somewhere. So if you read the official blog post from golang.org, it says that Go is both. It's yes and no OOP. So it doesn't look like classical OOP where you have classes, where you have subclassing, hierarchy, and all that kind of stuff, but it allows the OOP kind of style by providing the function receiver stuff. Like you get functions, like you use functions everywhere in Golang, and you have to use that kind of receiver in order to attach a certain functionality to a certain piece of structure. So that's basically how you simulate that. And there are also ways to embed types and to pretty much simulate every concept of OOP in Golang. But Go is really about being simple, and it's really about being lightweight and not being overheaded. So it does have OOP, but it's not the way people used to think of it. It's not the way people are used to it. So that's my take on this one. All right, so Go is only used by DevOps and for infrastructure tools. So what do you, John, think about this one? So Steve, speaking of Go being only used for infrastructure tools or by DevOps, that's kind of true. I mean, that's really a fact. There are really a lot of companies who use Golang for providing their infrastructure, and well, while that's true, Go is not only used for that. So if you check out the page like Golang users, I don't remember exactly, you can see a lot of companies using Go for backing their services, for doing backend, for providing web services, microservices. You could also see Go being used for streaming, for doing IoT. You can check out GoBot library. Also, I've seen this nice little framework for doing CMS on the web called Hugo. So you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, Go is growing, and it really has a lot of infrastructure tools such as Docker and stuff like that. But it's not only used for that, and you could pretty much do anything in Go. It's a general programming language, and as long as it's general programming language, you can do anything in it. So while there are a lot of infrastructure tools, there's not only infrastructure companies who do that, who use Go for that kind of purpose. So that's my take on this one, I think. All right, man, so here's another interesting one. So Go is only used at Google. So what do you think about this one? Because it really seems like a funny one for me. That's really funny, because I don't consider this a bias anymore, because it's known already that Go is not only used at Google, and while it is used at Google, Google is a big company and really solves big problems nowadays. And there are a lot of companies who also use Go, and it's really not a bias anymore. It's really something which doesn't bother me when I hear or read on the internet. So I don't think this is a bias. I don't think it's only used at Google. I know it's not only used at Google because there's a huge list of companies if you check out Golang users. So that's my take on this one. So it says Go is not mature enough for going into production. So what's your take on this one, John? So Steve, again, I don't consider this a bias, and I really don't bother when I hear or read it on the internet, because I know this is a fact that a lot of companies use Golang. And there's a huge and a big list on Golang users if you check it out. And also, if you recall, Go is in production for about 8 years, and that's about the same age as Node.js. So is Node.js in production? Is it meant to be used in production? Yes, it is mature. So I think Golang is also mature. It's battle tested, it solves real problems. It's firstly used at Google and not only. And I think you should really not bother about this one, because those are just biases. Those are just haters coming around and telling you that you cannot use Go because of that or because of that. So I really do not bother about this one, because this is really a funny one for me. So that's my take on this one, I think. All right, John, so here's another funny one. So Go is only used for Hello World apps, and also because it's easy. So what do you think about that one? To me, that really looks funny. I mean, really? So I really think this one is quite funny. I mean, you could really say that about any language, and because Go is simple, you should not really take that as an argument and say that you only write Hello World apps because it's simple. It's simple because it was made by geniuses, and what's simple takes a lot of effort. So I really don't think that, and I think that's a stupid question. That's something which you should not be bothered about, because you could write Hello World apps in any language, and you could write bad code in any language. So it really is up to programmers and to people who write that kind of code. So Go is meant to be used in production. Go is battle tested and you can use it. So don't bother, don't sweat it. That's just a bias. That's just something which is circulating around, but it's really not the problem we should worry about. So that's my take on this one as well. All right, guys. So the whole John on the interview thing was just a game in order to illustrate the truth about Golang. So if you guys like this, please let me know in the comments below. If you think it was scrappy, just let me know about that one, because I think I needed some help in explaining the things and making them more funny. So guys, after watching this video, make sure to check out the description of this video, because there will be links to the slides I used and also the code we used in this video. So make sure you stay tuned. Thank you so much for being with me, guys. It was really a pleasure to have you on board, and I really had a lot of fun explaining you why you should learn Golang and why Golang is gaining so much traction nowadays. Also, if you like this video, make sure you put that thumbs up. If you didn't like it, put a thumbs down and tell me how bad I screwed and where should I improve to make this a better experience for you. Also, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and click that bell in order to receive notifications, because I'm about to make more videos like this one. Guys, so question of the day: what language do you come from and what do you think about Go? Should you learn it or not? So answer in the comments below, and I would really love to see what do you guys think about Go and what are the languages you come from, because obviously I also come from another language and I didn't write Go from the beginning. So I would really love to see that in the comments.